This is part two of the lecture on Individualized Education Programs, or IEPs. My name is Dr. George Giuliani from Hofstra University, and we've been looking at the required components of the IEP, and we finished the first one, the present levels of educational performance. We now move on to the second required component of the IEP, which is that all IEPs must contain a statement of measurable annual goals. Measurable annual goals. And annual goals are statements of the major accomplishments expected for the student during the upcoming 12 months, and they must be able to be objectively measured. A well-written goal must describe the skill or level of performance that the child is expected to reach by a given time, at least in a year or a school year. So again, annual goals are statements of the major accomplishments. What is it that we want to accomplish over the course of the year? Again, over the course of the upcoming 12 months, or if the student is in school for 10 months, what is it that we hope to accomplish? And they must be objectively measured, meaning we have to be able to measure it. It can't be anything vague or subjective here. It's kind of like saying, I want to lose weight. That doesn't help because it doesn't give me a number. But if I say I want to lose 10 pounds in 4 months, now you know whether or not the goal is met in 4 months. Over the course of 4 months, if I lose 10 pounds, I can say that I met my goal. And that is an objective measurement. So objective measurements have a very specific answer to it. You can tell whether or not the goal has been met or has not been met. And so when we write goals on IEPs, annual goals on IEPs, the goals have to describe the skills or the level of performance that we're expecting this child to reach by a given time over the course of the school year. So for example, what are some annual goals? Alice will increase her reading decoding skills to the 4th grade level. So by the end of the year, if Alice is reading at the 4th grade level, we hit our goal. David will achieve a spelling score at the 5th grade level or above, as measured by the test of written spelling. So using the test of written spelling, at the end of the school year, if David reaches the 5th grade level or higher, we met our goal. Ian will identify 20 major warning words and symbols, such as stop, poison, danger, hazard, etc., with 95% accuracy, and will identify appropriate actions to take when these words are seen with 100% accuracy. So we give Ian these warning words like stop, poison, danger, and he's got to be able to identify them with 95% accuracy. Again, that can be objectively measured. Either he did it or he didn't. Excuse me. By the end of the year, Elise will be able to use her augmentative communication device, okay, a device used for children who are not speaking, nonverbal children, to produce a thought, comment, or idea in 3 out of 5 trials with no more than 50% teacher prompts or cues. Again, this is another example of how it can be measured. So annual goals should be related to meeting the child's needs that results from the disability, and to the extent possible, enable the child to be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum. So again, annual goals objectively measured. Now, when you look at the goals that I just talked about, when you looked at those examples just presented, you realize that they're incomplete in regarding the how part. So for instance, how will you get Alice to read at the 4th grade level? How will you get Ian to identify 20 major warning words and symbols? The bottom line is that the federal law IDEA says annual goals must be a part of the IEP, but it leaves it to the states and to the school districts to determine how they will be constructed and met. So how Alice will read at the 4th grade level might be different in one grade, in one school, than in another school. How we'll get Ian to identify those 20 major warning words might be different in school A as opposed to school B. IDEA doesn't tell us how we have to reach the annual goals. That leaves it to the school district to determine. So that's in the hands of the district. What IDEA says is that you must have annual goals and they must be objectively measured. The third required component of an IEP is that the IEP must indicate a statement about how the student's progress in meeting goals and objectives will be measured, including the ways in which this information will be communicated to parents. So this third required component is a statement about how are we going to monitor the progress of the student. Okay, we start with this IEP in September. How are we going to monitor the progress of the student over the course of the school year until June? How are we going to measure progress? And how are we going to inform parents of the progress that's being made by their child? This is referred to as progress monitoring, monitoring the progress of the child. And so IDEA says that an IEP has to say how we're going to monitor the progress of a child with a disability. Now, the progress monitoring provision requires that the IEP specify how the child's parents will be regularly informed of the child's progress towards the goal and the extent to which the progress is considered sufficient. The specific times that the progress reports are provided to parents and the specific manner and format in which a child's progress towards meeting the annual goals is reported is best left to the state and local officials to determine. So again, IDEA doesn't tell the states or tell school districts how you have to provide progress. They just say that you have to do it. IDEA says you have to have progress monitoring, but it leaves it to the states, leaves it to the school districts to determine how it will be handled. So for example, many times progress monitoring involves sending mid-quarter report cards, progress reports, report cards every quarter, having a parent meeting at the end of every quarter to update the parent on how the child is doing. But the bottom line is that IDEA says, look, every child with a disability has to have an IEP. And we don't just give the child an IEP and at the end of the year have an annual review and not keep parents up to date with how their child is doing. So we have to monitor the progress of the child. How will parents be notified regularly of how the child is progressing towards the goals in the IEP? That is called progress monitoring. That is the third required component of the IEP. So far in this lecture, we have covered the present levels of educational performance, we've covered the annual goals, and we've covered progress monitoring. Those are three required components of an IEP. This ends part 2 of the lecture on IEPs. You can now go to part 3 of the next lecture.